Every now and then, we all come across a show that we just can't get off our minds. A show that really hits you and hits you hard. But no matter how much it hurts, we're still excited to see more. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Comic Knight Zero, and today I'll be talking about... Created by Robert Kirkman, the mind that made the Walking Dead series, Invincible is a show based off of Kirkman's comic series of the same name that has really risen in popularity over the past couple months, with everyone and their mom being blown away by how much they enjoyed it, indicating how enthralling the show is for many viewers, myself included. And today, I'm here to explain why. Just as a note, this review will be spoiler free just so you can get an idea of whether or not this is a show you'd like to check out, in which I'll have a video coming out in the near future where I'll be going more in depth with a review of the first season, having spoilers and everything, but that's for another day. And just as a reminder, if you end up enjoying the video, feel free to leave a like as it lets me and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content. And if you want to see more videos like this, then be sure to smash that subscribe button, just be sure to get consent before you do. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. Like many entries in the superhero genre, Invincible throws its hat in the ring to be a new contender, and boy does it make an entrance, leaving viewers utterly shocked with just the first episode alone, which really gives the show a strong start. And it's able to do this by both establishing how superheroes function and are viewed in society, as well as showing us that the world isn't as safe as we first thought it to be. The show continues to push this idea by giving us more dire situations and imparting in this sense that all hope is lost at times. But despite the dark and gloomy outlook this show may instill in us from time to time, the show certainly has a rigid dichotomy between upbeat heroic moments and lugubriously dramatic ones, all with a mix of looming danger just ready to be unleashed. Though the tone certainly shifts more towards one direction as we kinda get to the end of the series, just as many superhero dramas do. Which, to be honest, I certainly consider this show to be a superhero drama. While the main focus is understanding what it means to be a superhero, you still get those drama-like moments during their non-superhero lives, showing us the kind of sacrifice as well as physical and mental tolls being a superhero can have on you, all of which we get to see firsthand in the show's protagonist, Mark Grayson, otherwise known as Invincible. Mark is more or less your run-of-the-mill teenager, though not as nerdy or physically weak as typical superhero tropes may expect you to think. Nor is Mark all that popular or gets bullied, but he certainly stands up to a bully in typical superhero trope fashion. But aside from that, he's a pretty normal guy. Oh, and his dad is Omni-man, one of the strongest beings on Earth. No big deal. Omni-man, otherwise known as Nolan Grayson, comes from the planet Viltrum, an alien planet far, far away, so Omni-man is more or less this show's version of Superman, but I'll talk about him later. Though it's important to bring up this family relation for two reasons. One, Omni-man being Mark's father is the reason why Mark got his powers in the first place. And two, since Omni-man is seen as one of the world's strongest heroes, we get an idea of what kind of hero Mark strives to be, because from a young age, he knew that someday he would inherit his father's powers. It's just a matter of when he'll actually get them. And it's throughout this waiting period, he spends his life idolizing and admiring his father for the heroic work he does, and plans to be just as good of a hero as he is. But now that his powers have finally kicked in, he's begun to learn what it costs to be that kind of hero. Invincible shows us the difficulties of balancing a normal life with a superhero one. And yes, while many superhero shows focus on this balance as a core element, I think Invincible goes even further by showing us the traumatizing experiences of actually trying to keep people safe during your heroic efforts. Not many heroes are shown having innocent civilians die in their hands, though to an extent, Mark does suffer from more than just that in a horrific way that I won't even begin to describe. Which, just as a warning, if blood and gore aren't really your thing, then I'm not certain how much you'd like this show. Now that's not to say that the show is all about blood and violence, but when fights get real, they get real. I think one of Invincible's strongest selling points is how brutal and graphic fight scenes can get, really giving you the weight and impact of each connecting blow, or showing us the utter brutality behind someone just getting absolutely massacred. Which, personally, I'm kind of a sucker for these kind of things in the world of animation. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not actively seeking the most violent and gory animated works I can find, But when a work of animation isn't afraid to show the realism of what physical harm could come to someone in a dangerous situation, then yeah dude, I'm all for it. One of my favorite animated movies of all time is Akira because up until that point I watched it, I'd never seen animation like this that wasn't afraid to be as graphic and violent as the setting and narrative called for, and I appreciate a show like Invincible all for the same reason. And while the superhero side of the story may feel intense at times, the civilian side of things isn't necessarily a walk in the park either. Basically, every hero we come across, we know their secret identity. We know who they are in the civilian world. And it's with this knowledge we can gain insight onto how their superhero work impacts their personal relationships. And although more established heroes already have a better handle on their work-life balance, we get to see how a new upcoming hero such as Mark, aka Invincible, tries to handle this balance himself, showing us the constant lying or how often he has to bail on commitments with friends, which is typical stuff you'd see in other superhero shows but is done to a more realistic degree, giving us moments where he's physically or mentally fatigued, causing long stays in the hospital or frequent absences. We see that trying to maintain this balance puts so much pressure on him that we sometimes see moments where he considers just giving the whole hero thing up, being unsure of what he wants out of life or what kind of hero he wants to be, in which these decisions are driven by multiple influences, whether that's the expectations set upon him by his father as a superhero, him trying to maintain his personal relationships, or trying to do missions given to him from the Global Protection Agency, run by Cecil Stedman, who is more or less this show's version of Nick Fury. But outside of viewing this from Mark's perspective, I think the show does an excellent job balancing the scenes between superhero fights and normal life drama. Invincible is a superhero show that doesn't leave civilian or normal life scenes high and dry. It still makes an effort to show us that the normal side of things is just important as the superhero ones, allowing even some of the more mundane scenes to still have an effect on the story, though I must admit some of these scenes tend to be a weaker element of the show. And even then, there's other storylines taking place outside of the scope of our protagonist. We see there are characters that we thought we knew having their own hidden agendas, doing shady things behind people's backs, sometimes even introducing plot threads that won't be focused on or resolved until later seasons of the series, giving us time to speculate what kind of impact these story threads could have later down the line, which I'm definitely excited to see. In regard to the animation side of things, I thought the animation was fine throughout the season, though some scenes certainly ended up looking a little rough, particularly during high velocity and fast moving scenes, or fight scenes that involve a lot of characters and common fodder in the background. In terms of voice acting though, dude, this cast gets a 10 out of 10 from me. This cast is just absolutely stellar. Stephen Yeun and Sandra Oh do an amazing job as Mark and Debbie respectively, and I think J.K. Simmons was one of the best casting decisions this show could have made to embody Omni-man. He just has that vocal range that can be comforting, fatherly stern, or extremely threatening all in the moments it needs to be. Also, shout out to the show for having representation amongst its cast. Minority characters were actually played and voiced by minorities instead of being completely whitewashed, which, truth be told, I think is something the voice acting and animation industries are getting better about or becoming more aware of and drawing attention to, with many actors and directors over the past couple years realizing their mistake in casting choices. But that's an entirely separate and long discussion on its own. But yeah, those are my thoughts. If you'd like to see my thoughts on this show in a more in-depth discussion with spoilers and everything, then be on the lookout. I'll have a video on that coming out very soon. That or I'll release both of these videos at the same time. We'll find out. But those are my thoughts on Invincible. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what kind of show this is, meaning I've either convinced you that it's worth checking out, or I've completely turned you off from watching it entirely. Hopefully it's not the latter, but I digress. Anyways, I think that'll be all for today. As always, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like as it lets me and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content. And if you want to see more videos like this, then be sure to smash that subscribe button. Just be sure to get consent before you do. I hope you're all doing well, and with that, I shall see you all next time.